Send it to everybody. Okay, so just one more minute. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in a moment. Okay, well, we're right at noon, so why don't we get started and we'll wait for others to join us. Okay, so hello, everyone. Welcome to Financial Fridays with Sainies and Equitable. Today's topic is Share Your Love Family Discussion Guide. Sainies is excited to offer these sessions in cooperation with our corporate partner, Equitable Advisors. Equitable has a long-standing presence in New York. Oops, I think I think we had a little person, somebody interrupt there. So yes, so Sadie's is excited to offer these sessions in cooperation with our corporate partner, Equitable Advisors. Equitable has a longstanding presence in New York, and a large portion of their New York client base is built upon the work they do within the public education system. Through Equitable, Sadie's members can receive competitive insurance rates and a full array of retirement services, including a complimentary financial profile for Sadie's members, which we urge you to take advantage of. This is a great benefit of membership. So joining us today from Equitable is Nick Aruglia. We'll save questions for Nick until the end of the presentation, but feel free to add your questions to the chat or the Q&A at any time. Our Q&A time today is best used for general questions, but please know that the Equitable team is available at any time to answer your personal and confidential questions. You'll find contact information for Nick and the other regional Equitable representatives at sainies.org. So now I'll turn it over to Nick.
Thank you very much for the intro. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Nicholas Agulia. I'm one of the vice presidents and a certified retirement education specialist with Equitable Advisors. Today, the topic we're going to have a discussion on is called Share Your Love. So Share Your Love is just a family discussion guide in ways to approach estate planning, talk a little bit more about what estate planning is, and how do we properly plan not only for ourselves, but how do we have sometimes those difficult conversations with family members to ensure that our wishes are being fulfilled, unfortunately, when that inevitable time may come. So as part of this presentation, everybody has access to, if they would like, and Share Your Love booklet. And that booklet, we do have physical copies that can be mailed to people. We also have an electronic version that can be sent out to people. So after we go through this or during the presentation, if you have any interest in just receiving a version of the Share Your Love guide, I just ask you put your name and email address in the chat, and we will get those emailed or mailed out to everybody at some time in the upcoming week. So with that being said, the agenda today, we're going to talk about the importance of estate planning. We're going to talk about, again, the Share Your Love discussion guide. And we're going to talk about what do we do or how do we facilitate this after its completion. So starting off with the importance of estate planning. So why should we really take the time to plan out an estate? What does it really mean? So a lot of people really think that we can wait until we're much older, or they think that maybe just the odds of something happening to us are very slim. So we maybe make it a low priority. Or other people sometimes just think that, well, maybe I don't have enough assets or I don't have enough going on financially that warrants an estate plan. And the fact really is that couldn't be further from the truth. So having a plan in place will just ensure that the transfer of assets to a loved one are fulfilled to our wishes. And no matter the extent of the assets, we really ultimately want to make sure that we're in control and that the state or the courts don't have to dictate that on our behalf. So Two important goals, again, of estate planning is really to facilitate difficult conversations and also to make sure that we're dotting the I's, crossing the T's on any relevant legal documents. So when we're looking at the process, and we're reading through kind of just different questions that we might have about the future, about how things might play out, the family love letter, the discussion guide that we encourage people to complete, it really, again, just starts to get you thinking about and answering some of those questions that maybe we wouldn't normally think about on a day-to-day basis. So if you have not completed estate planning documents prior to somebody's death or somebody's disability, the courts ultimately have the final say to decide on where the distribution of assets go, and in some states, even who would care for minor children. So the estate will have to pay attorney's fees and administrative fees, which can get pretty expensive, and there's a long length of time that this process can take. During a period of time, if somebody were to pass without a proper estate plan complete, without a proper will completed, one's assets get frozen. And if anybody's ever gone through this process, you're probably all too familiar with the probate process, and you've maybe even experienced monies getting frozen or the situation getting complicated and dragged out for years. I've seen 2-3+ years in certain cases. So during this period of time, nothing can be accessed, but the attorneys are still getting paid. The administrative costs going to the courts are still getting paid. So the only money that can be taken out of an estate at that point in time are to pay for the fees and the expenses. None of that money can be passed on to the individuals that potentially need it the most after one's passing. So one example that you may be familiar with or you may have read in the past, it's been a little while now, but with the example of Prince. So when Prince passed in 2016, one of the examples we learned is that he didn't have a will, and the state was left to divvy up the assets, and there was approximately 300 million, right? And that may not be anybody's specific situation on this call. Nonetheless, it's still an example of what would potentially happen. And in Prince's situation, he had several siblings, he had half siblings. To make things even more difficult and more complicated, a federal inmate came forward claiming to be Prince's biological son and only heir, and that he was entitled to the whole estate. So throughout the period of years, millions of dollars had been paid out to lawyers and bankers, while the family themselves and the rightful beneficiaries received nothing. So again, I get that's a little bit more of an extreme example, but again, it just highlights the vulnerabilities and the issues with not having a proper estate plan or a proper will even set up. So again, what are the ultimate goals of completing a Share Your Love family discussion guide, or at least having some sort of plan in place? And I'll say first and foremost, it just provides confidence that the assets are going to go to the right place. Making sure that our final wishes are fulfilled, that money possibly goes to a charity that we care deeply about, or that money goes to our family members as we see fit. It can also potentially make sure that if we have maybe family members, in some cases, maybe children that need some sort of special care or special assistance, it can also help to facilitate and make sure that that care is continued to be provided without losing any type of benefits that the state may also be providing. It also helps to promote honest and productive conversations with loved ones about your wishes, about things. I've facilitated many of these conversations within my own close family, within extended family, as well as within dozens and dozens of clients' families as well. And it's a topic that a lot of people avoid like the plague, right? And I completely understand that, right? I'm a human above and beyond being a financial advisor. So I get these aren't always the easiest conversations to have with parents, with children, with siblings. But again, at the end of the day, what I've usually found is when these conversations are had, they actually go a lot better and they're a lot smoother than a lot of times what people may expect them to be. So again, encouraging that open and honest and that productive conversation really puts people's minds at ease and gives them a sense of confidence, again, as to how their wishes will be fulfilled. And it also reassures the loved ones that they know what your wishes are. and that they know that those wishes are going to be carried out. And again, whether we're speaking about this specifically for everybody on this call, or whether we're speaking about this to help guiding conversations for maybe an aging parent, either way, it becomes relevant. So simply put, again, the purpose is really to put one's mind at ease and prepare loved ones to really carry out the wishes that you want. Taking an inventory of our life can be daunting. It can also be just something, again, that we look to avoid. But it's going to really help to break down everything that we have going on into really smaller, manageable steps and help our loved ones to be prepared for later in life. And for anybody who's ever gone through this, and I've sat down, again, with dozens and dozens of families going through very difficult times after losing a loved one. And I'll say the one consolation sometimes, the silver lining that I will sometimes hear is, I am so thankful, or I am so happy that mom or dad cared enough to make sure that they had all of their affairs in order. So that during this very challenging and difficult emotional time, I wasn't burdened with all of the financial stuff because everything was set up for me in advance. So there's definitely something to be said about that. And again, just from a personal experience, I hear this over and over and over. Unfortunately, I also see and hear the other side of it too, which is things are a mess. I think mom had a will. I think dad had this set up. Dad mentioned he had gold at some point in time. I don't know where anything is. I now have to take off of work and take time away from raising my family to make all these phone calls. I can't get access to information because I'm not listed on the accounts. I can go on and on and on. But the point being is that, and again, I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse with this a little bit, but the point being is the importance of this is help to really provide that ease for yourselves and for loved ones. So when looking through, and again, we would be more than happy to, myself or any of my colleagues within Equitable, to sit down and again, help fill out the Share Your Love Family Discussion Guide if you request one, or even just to help facilitate the conversation. But the way the guide is broken out, and again, whether we're using a formal guide or whether this is just something that you want to use in a marbled notebook, there's several areas that we should at least be thinking about and focusing about when it comes to creating this overall estate plan. And the first are going to be key contacts and advisors, insurance agents, who do we contact if something were to happen? Maybe it's if we have pre-planned funerals, or if we have some people, have things set up through a local college to where they'll donate their body to science. So any of this information, key contact people or key financial people, key advisors, we want to make sure we have note of. Second is going to be the financial information and assets, right? Clearly an important part of the discussion. Three are going to be the important documents, different legal documents. And four is going to be more of the ethical will and a family history. And this is the one that a lot of people don't necessarily complete or think about. It's not necessarily from a legal side of things. It's more so just being able to pass on a legacy. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. So key contacts and advisors, again, it's just some memory joggers here, some things to think about, right? A lot of this information seems like common sense, but as we kind of go a little bit deeper, there's a lot of pieces of information we may not necessarily think to take inventory of or to write down for people. We live in a very virtual world, right? So digital assets, different passwords that we have. How would somebody access different accounts if they needed to online? Medical information, who are our doctors, right? Different pharmacies that we're at. Clearly, again, financial information, financial assets, financial advisors. Who can we reach out to? Who do we contact? And then just other contacts in terms of emergency circumstances or situations. Knowing who these specific people are or specific accounts are at will, again, also just help to facilitate the process and streamline things. Different financial accounts, assets and liabilities. So in this section, you'll really want to make sure that all of our assets are accounted for so that loved ones can really effectively manage them if we're no longer able to. And this doesn't even necessarily mean if we're no longer here. At this point, we're just talking about if we're no longer able to. So as one starts to age, right? We just want to make sure we plan for what if we need a little help? What if we need a little assistance? Who is that person that can help us? And what are some of the things that they need to know to be able to help us? And a lot of times this can uncover going through this process. And I've seen this, again, I've done this exercise countless times. In a lot of cases, it helps to uncover assets that we maybe forgot about. We usually take people through and make sure that they're looking at the New York State Department of Unclaimed Funds. A lot of times people are able to find, not always something huge, but they're able to find a couple $100 or just some monies that somehow ended up in the New York State Department of Unclaimed Funds. And for those of you that are not aware, New York State requires banks, institutions, insurance companies, utility companies, after a certain period of time, they require any refunds or credits or payments that one may have coming to them be turned over to the state to sit in this fund that then individuals or beneficiaries can lay a claim against. And it's surprisingly a pretty easy process to go about that. So finding assets or documenting things that maybe we forgot about, any debts that are owed, again, debts or liabilities, credit card information, personal property, again, all different things we want to make sure that we're accounting for in the conversation, and just kind of going down and talking about this usually uncovers more than we always realized. Insurance and other benefits. So we want to make sure that when we're going through this, we're being specific, again, with wherever we're writing this information down. The guide is great. If we want to do it someplace else, fine. But we want to make sure that we're including things like policy numbers, benefit amounts, if there's premiums being paid. I have seen circumstances where somebody had a life insurance policy and they became disabled and they stopped making the life insurance payments. And when they ultimately passed away, that life insurance policy that their family, their beneficiaries thought was going to be there was not. So again, having this information detailed and making sure that somebody has access to it or somebody knows about it prior to something happening to us helps to mitigate and avoid these circumstances. So important documents and information. Again, this section is going to cover just different documents and things that we need to be accounting for, in some things, again, that we may not think about immediately. So for example, I'm sure most of you know someone maybe who served in the military. Military discharge papers are one example of things that sometimes don't always get put in the important documents file. So something, again, that we want to make sure that we may be planning for. For some people, it may be incredibly important for either themselves or for their family members to ensure that there's maybe a military funeral, right? All of this information, providing it up front, helps to, again, honor those wishes. So estate planning and will documents specifically. So a lot of times when we're going through estate planning documents, there's the big three, we'll call it, that are the most commonly talked about. And those big three are generally a will, a medical power of attorney, and a durable general power of attorney. Now, a medical power of attorney, otherwise known as a healthcare proxy, the terms are somewhat synonymous. So a will, healthcare proxy, power of attorney are the three most people are familiar with. But there's also some additional legal documents, things like a personal property disposal list, a living will, and then a ethical will as well. So just taking a step back and looking at just a will specifically. So a will is a legal document that's going to dictate pretty much two specific things. One is it would dictate who would take care of, who would raise minor children in the event that, God forbid, something happened to both parents. If we do not have minor children or that situation is not relevant, then again, no worries on that part. But the second part of the will is going to name who would inherit or who would receive different options. Sorry, I advanced too far there. Who would receive different assets that do not have beneficiaries associated with them. So very important to understand as part of the whole estate planning process, beneficiaries supersede a will. So I'll say that again, beneficiaries supersede a will. And what I mean by that is what is stated in the will is secondary to what you have stated on your investment accounts or insurance accounts. So most of you probably have your 403(b) retirement plan. So the importance of making sure that we have our primary beneficiary as well as secondary beneficiaries listed on the 403(b) retirement plan is extremely important. We also want to make sure if we have life insurance set up, that we have our primary and secondary beneficiaries on there. We want to make sure our New York State teachers retirement system has the beneficiary associated with that. And in some cases where we have situations of maybe divorce or one of several other various circumstances, it's not uncommon to find incorrect people listed as beneficiaries. And even if we go and update our will, again, the will is secondary to beneficiaries. So first and foremost, beneficiaries need to be updated on all of our accounts, but the will is going to help facilitate who's going to care for minor children, and it's going to help facilitate where assets that do not have a beneficiary would pass on to. Next is the personal property disposal list. And this is just going to be more of an inventory of anything that would generally not have a beneficiary. And in some cases, it's not uncommon to find situations where people would pass on a lot of their family heirlooms or would pass on personal property prior to them passing. But again, we can't always plan for when that might be. So making sure that we have some sort of list that if there's anything that's important to us, right, things such as a wedding ring, right, maybe, again, in this example, a Danish grandfather clock. I don't know how many people are passing that on, but nonetheless, you get the point, right? Maybe there's a piano that's been passed down generationally, or a pearl necklace, or one of many different tangible items. It may be important to us to make sure that we're choosing who that passes on to. Or more importantly, it may be very important for you to make sure you are the benefactor in receiving one of these items that has been passed down throughout the family. So having a personal property disposal list, this should be kind of done separately, but generally included with the will as well. So the living will, again, looking at it more as a kind of a healthcare proxy. And this is going to name who would be able to make healthcare decisions on your behalf in the event that you were unable to do so on your own. You can fill these out usually at your doctor's office. If anybody's ever been hospitalized, it's one of the first things they have you do there is they have you fill out a healthcare proxy. I generally suggest, though, if you're going to meet with an attorney and you're going to have the attorney do your will anyways, you might as well have them do a power of attorney, and you might as well have them do a healthcare proxy at the same time. So the durable general power of attorney, okay, that just allows somebody to, again, help make financial decisions on your behalf. So everything from just kind of helping out with calling the phone company, helping out with paying credit cards, getting access to somebody's auto insurance. Without the power of attorney, we're not able to necessarily call and get this information. So that power of attorney allows either, again, somebody to do this on our behalf, if we're talking about us, but it also allows, if we are named as the power of attorney for somebody else, it allows us to now be able to call on behalf of our mom, our dad, our uncle, our whomever, to help obtain the information that we may need to help them with their circumstances. So arrangements, right? And again, some people don't like to think about this. I've met with other people who they want to intricately plan their services right down to the songs that are going to be sung or the hymns that are going to be sung, to who's going to be invited to, to a party after, to where a breakfast may be held, on and on and on. So again, this is a very, very personal decision, a very, very personal discussion. But having this discussion and making sure that, again, people are aware of what those honors may look like, or what the final ceremonies may look like, is something that, again, should be planned out. The level of intricacy clearly is going to vary depending on the person and their wishes. So once we've had these conversations, right? Once we've initiated the conversation, we've facilitated the conversation, we've gathered all the information, we've taken an inventory. What do we do now after it's completed? So after it's completed, it's really important to, first of all, make sure that we have copies of our plan, copies of the Share Your Love Family Discussion Guide, or copies of all of our documents stored somewhere in a safe place. But above and beyond that, we really want to make sure that either one, somebody else has access to those documents or copies of those documents, or we want to make sure that at least somebody knows where they are. And it wouldn't be, again, the first time that I sat down with somebody and they said, I know mom or dad has this, but I cannot find it anywhere. Right? If the hiding spot is so good that nobody else can find it when they need it, it may not be beneficial. So again, guys, this is a very high-level overview. And the point of it really, again, is not to go into the weeds about the specific laws and the specific recommendations. Those are much, much more in-depth conversations and that are personal, very customized, and that are really meant to be had with an advisor, in many cases with an advisor and an attorney collaboratively. This is just meant to establish the factor, to really just, again, reiterate the importance of having this overall plan set up, of completing some sort of guide in advance. And in doing so, hence the name of the guide, the Share Your Love Guide, it really originates from, sharing our love, meaning that we're going out of our way to have uncomfortable conversations, or we're going out of our way to pre-plan things that may be unpleasant to think about, but we're doing so out of love so that whomever is left to deal with the consequences has everything set up for them. And I've heard many people say that that's one of the ultimate acts of love. So with that being said, thank you for your time today. My contact information is on the phone if anybody has specific questions. Again, we'll go through the chat and we'll make sure that everybody gets a copy who requested one. And if anybody has questions at this time, we have about 4 or 5 minutes left. I can look through and try and take questions as they come, if there are any.
Nick, there is one in there. Is a trust better than a will? How does a trust work?
Wonderful question. The short answer is apples and oranges. So the will is going to specify, again, where items are going to go, but the will is going to have limitations to it. The trust itself can actually own those assets. So for instance, a will might say, my 3 kids inherit the house. My 3 kids inherit the assets. A trust actually takes ownership prior to one's passing of the house, of the assets. So there's pros and cons to a trust. Not everybody needs a trust. But one of the biggest benefits of a trust is it allows you to be a little bit more specific than the will. The will can state, my kids get my assets, my kids get my house. The trust can state, the proceeds from the sale of the house go to my kids, but I don't want those assets paid out to my kids until their ages 25, 30, and 35, and I want it distributed over 3 incremental payments. So some people like the idea, either knowing their kids. So I've had many people come to me and say, well, my kids would just blow through the money if I left them a lump sum at one time. So I want to look at setting up a trust so that we can make sure that the money goes to them, but incrementally instead of getting it all in a lump sum. The other benefit of what a trust provides is a trust, depending on the type of trust, there's different types of trusts, but certain trusts are going to help mitigate any type of long-term care issues. So in New York State, we have something called a 5-year look back. A 5-year look back means any of our assets that are in our name have to be transferred out of our name, either into a trust or to the ownership of a child or somebody else prior to 5 years before us needing some sort of long-term care. If we do not do so, and somebody has to go into a nursing home, at that point in time, you have to fill out all this paperwork. There's Medicaid applications. And what ends up happening is the state says, sorry, we're not going to cover you because you have too much assets between your house and your checking and your savings. Therefore, we're going to force you to spend your assets down. Therefore, we're going to put a lien against your house and potentially take it away from you. So there's certainly advantages of having assets in a trust at the right time. They're a little bit more complicated. There's different types, and trusts are specifically facilitated by an attorney. Long-winded, but hopefully that answers the question there.
Okay, that's great. I think the only other comments were, yes, this is being recorded again, and we'll post the recording at saneys.org next week. There was a question about fees from Equitable. So Nick, maybe you could take a minute just to explain the Saneys Equitable relationship and how consultations work.
Perfect. So, yep, I missed that one. Sorry. So in terms of fees for the advice and for the services, so because of the arrangement, we do not charge a fee for our advice or for our time. So sitting down with somebody to kind of go through their assets, to facilitate the conversation, help them fill out the book, really just answer questions, there is no cost. The average cost, just to put this in perspective, across the state for an advisor-guided comprehensive financial plan can range usually anywhere from $1,500 to $4,000. So we do not charge a fee for putting that together. Part of what we do is also managing assets. So we are the largest provider, as many of you probably know, of managing 403B retirement plans through pretty much every single district across the state. We also do a lot of work with life insurance and pension protection and pension planning, as well as managing assets even outside of the state system, such as spouses' assets. When it comes to managing accounts or managing specific assets, there's different fees that would be associated with those accounts. And those are conversations that I'll say are a little bit more one-off, and we can, have those conversations as the time comes. But more importantly, I think what the question is asking, based off of the planning process, based off of the whole estate planning conversation that we would facilitate, there is no fee for that.
Okay, and then specifically someone asked, is there a fee for creating a will? But
I gave a very long-winded explanation and I hit it the wrong topic, so my apologies there. So is there a fee for creating a will? Yes, there is. That fee is going to vary based off the attorney. So again, while there is parts of law and finance and taxes that all cross over, I don't want to overstep our boundaries. So giving information and education about the legal side of things is what we do. The actual completion of the legal documents is facilitated by an attorney. If you don't have one locally, again, let us know. We have offices all across the state. I'm sure we have attorneys in every location that we partner with or can work with. I'm going to tell you from what I've seen, to do a will, power of attorney, and healthcare proxy, just the 3 basic documents for a couple, usually going to range somewhere maybe around the $800 range. I've seen some less, I've seen some more. For a single person, it's usually somewhere maybe in the $600 range. It's definitely, there's a bigger breaker discount for a couple.
Okay. And in that regard too, Saneys members are, another benefit that we offer is we have a personal legal plan as a benefit of membership. So if you go to saneys.org, and I can put it right now, I'll put it in the chat. We do work with a firm to provide opportunities for members to explore personal legal matters. So you want to reach out, look at that link, and you can explore the Saneys personal legal plan and what that includes, which is, it says the plan enrollees receive a simple will, power of attorney, living will, and healthcare proxy. But if you enroll in that personal legal plan through Saneys. So something to check out for an additional resource. And again, The Equitable team and all their contact information is also at saneys.org. So check out all those benefits. And thank you, Nick. I think we're good for the day.
Perfect. Thank you very much for having us again. And everybody have a great weekend.
Okay, bye-bye.